Hi everyone, welcome back to this series on GRE prep materials. We're here with the third and last installment where I'm going to be going over some of the miscellaneous resources that I find a lot of people end up using when they're studying for the test. So in the first video, we covered the ETS website, which is extremely important. And then in the second video, we looked at GRE prep books and math review books, which tend to be the most common study tool. In this last video, I want to cover flashcards and mobile apps, and more generally, vocabulary building tools. Some other online resources and websites that I find people use, and tutoring, whether or not getting a tutor would be good for you. To start off with, let's look at some vocabulary building tools. Almost everybody, when they go and start studying for the GRE, they quickly realize that their vocabulary isn't as well developed as it needs to be for the test. Now, this isn't to say that you have to study vocabulary. Most people coming out of an undergrad will have a vocabulary well developed enough to be able to do just fine on the test. But if you want to push a high score, get a competitive score on the verbal section, you're probably going to need to study vocabulary somehow. So the first and most common tool that people use are flashcards, and oftentimes they'll buy a set of flashcards from one of the big prep companies. And if you go on Amazon and just search something like GRE vocabulary, you're going to find things like this, like the Manhattan Prep 500 advanced words, 500 essential words. You'll see Princeton Review has their own set, Kaplan has their own set, and of course there's a bunch of other books put out by various, prep companies that are seeking to teach you vocabulary through whichever methods they find best. And I don't think that any of these products are better or worse than any others. For the most part, it's the same list of 500 or 1,000 words. And so, I mean, that being said, you can find these lists online and you can even make your own, which I think is one of the best things you can do. The actual process of making the cards, figuring out how can I use this in a sentence, and then even taking those words and trying to use them in conversation is going to lead to actually learning these words long term as opposed to just cramming them and memorizing them. Another alternative or maybe supplement to flashcards are a lot of the vocab apps that you can get for your phone. If you just go to the App Store and search something like GRE vocabulary, you're going to get a bunch of options for free apps that just essentially are flashcards that test your vocabulary. And I think that this is pretty good, mainly just because of the convenience factor for being able to use these throughout the day. If you have a bus ride or just downtime at work for 5 or 10 minutes, this is a great way to just brush up on some vocabulary. Another thing that I find a lot of students have questions about or sort of turn to are some sort of daily reading, like The Economist, The New Yorker, or Scientific American. And I think this is mainly because they list this on the GRE website as a thing that you ought to be doing. And it can definitely be helpful, especially for people out there who have trouble with the reading comp. Finding some sort of difficult reading to do each day is going to build up your tolerance for that and increase your speed and understanding. So, any of these or similar types of publications are great. I would say that some things to do as you're reading. Firstly, make sure you're looking up words that you don't know. That's going to help. Make sure that you are reading articles that aren't just the ones that are interesting, but also the ones that seem kind of boring. And if possible, see if someone else you know and trust can read the article as well with you and discuss it. I find that to really get better at reading comp, it does take that process of critical thinking and conversing with somebody about it to really make it worth your time. Lastly, here, I just want to mention Magoosh. So, if you go onto the App Store and search for GRE or GRE vocab, inevitably you're going to see Magoosh somewhere near the top. And a lot of people I work with end up picking up their app. And I think it is a good app for vocabulary, and it does have the benefit of it's a way to stay accountable on your studying just because it'll hit you with daily questions, and again, like the convenience factor of having this on your phone is often a plus. However, it is pretty shallow and pretty random in the way that it presents questions, and so I wouldn't recommend this as your only resource for studying, but if you just want something else to supplement everything else you're doing, this is a great tool. Here we're going to look at some of the common online resources that people run into when they're looking for GRE material out there. And the number one thing that people run into is Khan Academy, mainly because it's listed on the ETS website, and it is a good resource for a particular thing. If you are struggling with the basics of math, if you have forgotten how to find the area of shapes, you don't know how to calculate probability or to factor a polynomial and things like that, this is going to be great for you. However, it doesn't go into the specifics of the GRE, and so you can spend a lot of your time just doing basic stuff without learning strategies or how to answer questions on the test. But if you are looking to utilize the GRE course from Khan Academy, the best way to access it is if you just Google GRE Khan Academy. The top link will be on the ETS site, ets.org, and you can see, so back in the ETS website, they have a list of all of their concepts, which this might look familiar from the table of contents in video 1 when looking at their PDF review document, and they link off to all the relevant videos and subject matter from Khan Academy. So again, you can see that some of this is pretty basic. I doubt most of you will have to go back and review multiplication and division, but it is a good place to go if, for instance, you've forgotten all the equations of a circle, right? So this is going to be good for that, but don't just stop there. Make sure you take that information and then practice it on real questions from the test. In the last video, we looked at a lot of the big test prep companies and their books that they put out, and I had mentioned that a lot of them come with either a subscription or a discount to their websites. The type of questions you're going to find on their websites are pretty close to what you find in their books. And so my recommendations there still stand for, which site would be best for you is probably the same as which book would be best for you. The benefit to the websites is, of course, that they have a large quantity of questions. So Kaplan's QBank or Manhattan Prep's practice tests on there, you're probably not going to run out of questions. However, they are all subscription based, and so you just kind of have to weigh that. Is this something that I want to pay for or not? Lastly, there are of course a bunch of free websites out there claiming that they have great GRE test prep and practice tests and practice questions, and some of them do, but a lot of them don't. And so there is a wide range of quality out there, and so you have to be careful. Some of them are really, really bad. I have seen some free websites that just have miserable questions, just absolutely incorrect strategies that doesn't look anything like the test. And so if you are just going to use some free whatever website, I would recommend that you talk to somebody that you trust that has either taken the test or knows about the test, or at least use your best judgment to compare it to what you're seeing out of a prep book or on the ETS website. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention tutoring as one of the resources that people seek out when studying for this test. So, being a tutor myself, I know that there are great benefits to it, and I find that tutoring is probably best for two types of people. The first is if you have trouble teaching yourself. So, of course, if you take some of these practice tests, if you look through some of these prep books, and you say to yourself, I can't even make sense of the explanations, let alone the questions themselves, then it might be time to find someone to help you. Similarly, if you just need someone to keep you accountable, this can also be a really good reason to have a tutor. So, someone there who is going to assign work, help you design a study plan, and just check in with you each week and can reliably tell you whether or not you're keeping up with your work, whether you're making progress. So, if you are one of these two types of people, I would suggest perhaps finding yourself a tutor. There are, of course, some downsides to tutoring. The first and most obvious one is that it can be extremely expensive. I know from experience, I mean, I charge a pretty high premium for my services, and any graduate tutor out there worth the money is going to be expensive. So for some of you, this isn't an issue, but if money is an issue, recognize that in this series of videos, we have covered a huge amount of resources out there that are relatively inexpensive, and a lot of them are free. And so I would search those out, and if at the end of all that you still feel like you need extra help, then go and find a tutor. Secondly, quality can be highly variable. And I mean, this is obvious, right? Every tutor is different, and even within a tutoring company, even within Kaplan or Princeton Review, if you go to their tutoring services and they are highly reviewed, you might just match with a tutor that you don't get along with, you don't find their methods very good. So just recognize what you're getting into with finding a tutor, and make sure that if you match with a tutor that you find is just phoning it in, isn't doing a good job, that you advocate for yourself and don't get stuck with a bad tutor, because it's not good for any of us, you or the other high quality tutors out there. If people are just sort of saying, well, I paid for it, I guess this is what I get. No, definitely advocate for yourself. Make sure you get a good tutor if you're paying that premium for it. And this concludes our little series on the GRE resources out there. I hope you found it informative or useful in some way. And if you do have any questions about something I didn't talk about, or you have some ideas for things that ought to have been included in this video, let me know in the comments below, and I hope you'll continue to follow some of these videos as we progress into the test. Thanks.